Okay. I'm in it, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. The Cerebral Puzzle Showcase is a puzzle game showcase that happens on Steam every year. It features a lot of different puzzle games, thinky games as the community dubs them. You have hidden object games, jigsaw puzzles, all sorts of different types. I always really like the showcase. It's a fun way to see what puzzle games are upcoming, find what I'm going to look forward to, play a lot of demos, and there's always a lot of good sales on existing puzzle games too. But my favorite part is the banner that they do every year. They've done one every single year, and it always has at least a few characters or references to different puzzle games that have come out throughout the year. This type of like mashup image is always my favorite. Here's one for a Hidden Depths Steam bundle. You see Fez, Blueprints, Tunic, Outer Wilds, Animal Well. Here's one for Dracnex, the company that puts this on their own puzzle bundle. You have Sokobond, Bonfire Peaks, Pactress Parabox, Good Snowman is Hard to Build, Monsters Expedition. I always love this type of mashup image, so every single time this showcase happens every year, it's always a fun game of trying to point out exactly, which games I recognize. And, while it's fun picking out like, oh, that's Golden Idol, that's Duck Detective, pointing out games is fun, on its own. I want to take a step further. And this year's showcase is happening in a few weeks, May 28th to June 4th. And I thought it would be fun to try and predict which games would show up on this year's banner. One up the banner itself. Take the game of just pointing out, fun references to games a little bit further. Let me try and get ahead of Dracneck and try and see, what exactly is going to be on this banner. So I will be getting into my predictions, but before that, we have to, go through what the previous years here can tell us. To start off, this showcase is put on by Dracneck and Friends, a very well-known puzzle game developer. They've done a lot of games, a lot of Sokobond games like Sokobond, A Good Snowman is Hard to Build, Monsters Expedition, as well as some path drawing ones, Cosmic Express, Bonfire Peaks, I guess, is another Sokobond game. Point is, a very prolific, popular puzzle game developer. I've played a lot of their games. I love their stuff. And being, one of the bigger puzzle game developers in the space, it only makes sense that they're the ones to kind of constantly put these on. So starting from there, I'm just gonna put this down here. This is gonna be filled in a bit. Starting with 2022, I'm pointing at this. I don't know how well you'll actually be able to see it. My printer's not that good. This guy at the bottom here, Human Resource Machine, of course, from the Tomorrow Corp. Up here, of course, guy playing the ukulele, Outer Wilds. This is just an excuse for me to show off which of these puzzle games I have. Up here in the corner, Patrick's Parabox, which is also a game that you saw down here. It's probably off screen. Dracneck publish. Not that that actually really matters as a connection, but we'll get to it. Little detective guy up here. You might not be able to see it. That's the main character from Suspicious Developments Gunpoint. We have the Compass from Return of the Obra Dinn, of course. And the main character of Cardo up here in the corner. I'm realizing I don't know where I put Superland. I think I forgot to print out Superland, but he's the guy down here. If I could, I would just, the tape was strong enough, I would just tape up my copy of the game, but whatever. But yeah, Superland, also the cube. That's part of Superland. Hot second, I thought that was the cube from like the Cube games, Cube 1 and 2, but no, it isn't. That's just what the Superland guy summons in Superland. I haven't played the game yet. The other three that you'll see featured here, that I'll put here in the middle, is one, that is the monster character from Dracneck's A Good Snowman is Hard to Build, and most notably, A Monsters Expedition, which you can also see him on the top of here. This is one of my favorite physical copies to ever exist. It's a collection of all their first 4 games, at least. I don't know why I'm geeking out about this. This is such a cool one. Up here in the corner, Baba from Baba Is You. And then the Sentry from Portal. I'm putting these 3 in the middle because, as you'll quickly see, they are the only 3 that are repeated across all of these. But that's 2022. So now we can go on 2023. All right, for 2023, we have the same Baba, Portal Sentry, Monster from Monsters Expedition. These guys still there. However, we also have the idol from the Case of the Golden Idol. The Snakebirds from Snakebird, that difficult game. Up here we have the Goo from World of Goo. It's getting crowded. I'm just going to put it over here. Even though World of Goo 2 eventually came out, this was 2023. This was before they'd even announced that game. So this was still very much helping them promote the first World of Goo. And then sitting on the World of Goo, we have Fez, of course, with his little Fez on. Just also putting that over there. Down here we have the Can from Can of Wormholes. And then in a fun little duo here, we have the camera, and behind it, the little cat from both from Viewfinder. I can just stick that one up there. And then coming out of the camera down there, we have Storyteller. I think that is a fun little combination of both those games. I think it's real neat. Now moving on to 2024, on the far left, we have Lorelei from Lorelei and the Laser Eyes. Here, the main protagonist from Paper Trail. There again is the monster from Monsters Expedition. Portal Sentry is still there, and yeah, Baba is right there. Also have up here Mr. Duck Detective himself from the first Duck Detective, the Secret Salami, which, yeah, of course I have this one. Why wouldn't I have this one? Right here, we have one of the robot characters from the Talos Principle 2. I don't have the second game physically, I only have the first one, but you know, I think these guys are in both of them, so I guess it doesn't matter. But this showcase was, I think, after the second game came out, so this is very much, you know, promoting this one. Up here is the main little bug character from Cocoon. Up here also on the top left, those little worm guys are from Lock Digital, a adaptation of a pen and paper game that Draknek helped publish. And then last but not least, this little star guy down here in the corner, Isles of Sea and Sky. I had not ever played this game, so it took me a while to identify this one, but just because I always associate the game with, you know, the main character here, but no. The entire game revolves around you and this little star guy right there. So there's Isles of Sea and Sky. All right, last here for 2025, we have here in the corner, a little cat, bouncing cat character. That's Kato from Kato, Buttered Cat Platformer. It's a puzzle platformer about a buttered cat. I forget the name of it. We also have one of the dog characters from Pup Champs, from Afterburn, who, you know, famously have done games like Railbound, Invento, Golf Peaks. Up here, it's the same worm creatures from Lock Digital, so I didn't reprint it. It's already over here. And then right next to it is the blueprints themselves from Blueprints. I would hold up my copy of the game if it was here. Baba from Baba Is You still there. Portal Sentry Turret's still there, and the monster mascot of Draknek is also still there, but this time he has a little electric claw thing here, which is a reference to his recent game that had just come out at the time of this showcase, the Electrifying Incident. Can slap that one right there. The Idol makes a return from Golden Idol, but this time for the Rise of the Golden Idol, which had just come out. And the Duck Detective also makes a return, but this time for its second game, which had also come around, I think, around the same time as the showcase. Duck Detective and the Ghost of Glamping. I would also be holding up my copy for this game, but Super Rare has not sent it yet. And then last but not least, here in the corner, you can see a little computer with a picture of some girls on it. That's The Root Trees Are Dead. Fantastic game. Incredible game. All right, as you can see, I can successfully identify all these. That's the end of the video. Thank you for watching. But yeah, so what? These are the previous games. What does that tell us about this year's? What can we grab from this to try and predict what's going to come next? There are a few things in common that we can kind of pull between all four of these. First of which is that there are always 10 games, and that includes the main three here of Monsters Expedition, Portal, and Baba. There's always 10, and these are the only three to have been here all 4 times thus far. The monster from Monsters Expedition makes sense because, you know, that's like their mascot. Portal makes sense because it's a Steam showcase. Baba, I guess, is just up there because it's a very recognizable, cute puzzle game character mascot. So I guess that's why he keeps coming back. But yeah, only 10 games, and these are the only 3 that really repeat. There are a few other repeats here, but they're for different reasons. You know, we have 2 Duck Detectives here, but that's only because they each had 2 different games. Same with the Rise of the Golden Idol games here. But yeah, aside from those, no real other repeats. So we can pretty much safely predict these 3 and then maybe another 7 games. Lock Digital was not out here, but was out by the time the 2025 one happened. And that actually leads me into the next point. In all 4 of these, the games that were on here were already released. Lock Digital here, of course, being the exception. I think it's because it's, their own project. But aside from that, all of these games that are featured here had already been out or was, coming out around the same time as the showcase itself. And excluding the first showcase and a bit of the games featured in 2023, for the most part, for the past 2 years, it's mostly been puzzle games that have come out within the past year. These first 2 years, they were featuring a lot of, very well-known kind of puzzle game mascots and characters, just because, it's the first one. 2022 is a lot of games from, just across the years. Return of the Obra Dinn was 2018, Cardo's 2020, Human Resource Machine was I think 2015, 18, around there. Outer Wilds was 2019, just kind of all over the place. 2023 has had a few other classic puzzle game mascots like Fez, Snakebird, World of Goo. But here was when they started doing a lot more recent stuff like Golden Idol, Storyteller, Can of Wormholes, Viewfinder. And then, by the time 2024 and 5 happened, it was pretty much all games released within the past year. Next thing we can kind of ascertain from this is that there is no hard consistency with any publishers or developers. For the most part, aside from some repeat games themselves like Duck Detective and Golden Idol, there aren't really any repeat developers here aside from Draknek themselves. And there's maybe a couple times where publishers repeat themselves. I think the most common one here is Annapurna. Annapurna had Outer Wilds, Storyteller, Lorelei, and Cocoon. But I don't think Annapurna is here so many times just because Draknek wants to include them or anything. I think they just so happen to have some pretty prominent puzzle games come out, so they were featured a lot. Cannot use the developers as any gauge as to, what's probably going to show up. Next, of course, this feels, the most obvious, but the game needs to have a recognizable character or item to be able to feature here. There are a lot of puzzle games out there, a lot of good puzzle games, but I feel like to be featured on the banner here, you not only need to be well known, but you also need to have something that they can actually put up here. In many cases, it's the main character. Superland, Outer Wilds, Cardo have very distinct main characters. Baba, of course, the Duck Detective. Lorelei from Lorelei and the Laser Eyes. Even from some puzzle games that weren't as popular as some of the others on here, Can of Wormholes still has a very distinct main character you can kind of slap on there. And it doesn't always need to be a character. That's why I also include item here. It can be a camera, like the camera from Viewfinder, or, these blueprints from Blueprints. The Golden Idol itself, not a character. That's just, a distinct item from the Golden Idol series. Compass from Obra Dinn, another great example, just needs to be a recognizable character or item, something that they can, something distinct they can slap on one of these banners, and, any nerd like me will be able to point at it and be like, that's so-and-so. And then last but not least is something I haven't mentioned before, but the game needs to have been a headline feature in the Draknek and Friends newsletter. To be specific, I'm talking about the Thinky Third Thursday newsletter that Alan Hazelden, the founder of Draknek, puts out every third Thursday of the month. It's a great newsletter that does a roundup of all the big puzzle game releases from the past month or so, and also gives you a good idea of what you should look forward to. The newsletter always has a huge list of links to every game, but at the top of every newsletter, there's always, and you can kind of see down here, there's always a main kind of headline feature section for games that Alan really wanted to include. And most of the games that I featured here have been headline features in that same newsletter. Newsletters started around mid-2023, and from there, a lot of the games that you see from here on were all headline features in the newsletter. Paper Trail was featured in the May 2024 newsletter. Lorelei and the Laser Eyes was in both the April 2024 newsletter as well as the January 2025 newsletter. Cocoon was in October 2023's and January 2024's for, their Game of the Year newsletter edition. Isle of Sea and Sky, January 2024 for their upcoming games newsletter, as well as May 2024. Kato, September 2024. Retreats Are Dead, November 2023 for the original itch version of the game. And then again in January 2024 and January 2025 for the remake. Pup Champs was May 2025. Blueprints was June 2024, January 2025, March 2025, and April 2025. And Golden Idol, June 2024, October 24, a bunch of others. You get the idea. These games have all been featured in this newsletter. And I think it's a very safe indicator of what games we can hope to expect in next year's banner. All right, now that we know all of this, we can go into what my formal predictions are gonna be, but first, some honorable mentions, some almosts that made it onto my predictions list. First are the games that don't really have a distinct character that I can imagine being featured on here. Games like Locator, Incident at Galley House, The Button Effect. As much as I think it would be funny for, just a button from The Button Effect to be featured on one of these, I can't imagine it would make for a very, compelling reference or inclusion. Also, Strange Jigsaws, that was a pretty fun kind of puzzle hit last year, but unless, you're featuring one of the jigsaw pieces from that game, can't imagine that one makes it in either. Also, Locator and Incident Galley House, I did mention them, but those are technically upcoming games, and as we have, established, game needs to be out already. So we can also cross out games like Nonolith, Professor Layton, which is also still coming out, but even if, Professor Layton was already out, I can't honestly imagine it would be featured here. Just, it feels too big of a game. This, showcase feels pretty dedicated to just showcasing like big indies. Same as Order of the Sinking Star. That's, I think, arguably the biggest and most anticipated puzzle game coming out this year. That's Jonathan Blow's new project that features mechanics from 4 different other puzzle games. And 2 of the puzzle games that Order of the Sinking Star is pulling from were developed by Alan Hazelden of Drachneck. But given Jonathan Blow's recent views, and given Alan Hazelden's pretty public disavowal of him when the game was announced at last year's Game Awards, even if the game was already coming out, I don't think it would still be included here. Other almosts, Rel, Warped Worlds, and Troubled Times, purely for that character. That is very, that has a very distinguishable character. Don't think it's going to be on here though. Factory Balls Go would be a very funny inclusion since it's the full-fledged sequel to the famous Flash game Factory Balls. It would be very funny to see, one of those balls getting painted on one of these banners, but I also don't think that's going to be on here. Forbidden Solitaire is a pretty recent kind of hit, a game that I'm, want to play at some point, but unless you include like maybe The Wizard or like a solitaire card, I don't think that one's going to be on here either. Rita, the upcoming crossword game, it's upcoming, so I don't think it's going to be on here, but it has a very cute bird character on it, which I feel like is a no-brainer if you're including a bird. Maybe it'll be on next year's. I feel like Rita's a good prediction for next year's. Puzzle Spy International, as you can kind of see at the bottom here, has a very distinct main character, is a recent game that kind of came out. I also don't think this one's going to be on here, though. I'm saying all these as kind of like, honorable mentions, but also I'll be mortified if any of the games I just mentioned end up being on there anyways. Golden Idol and Isles of Sea and Sky both had expansions last year. So I guess it could technically pop up here, but I think, those are only expansions. So these have always ever just been to reference full-fledged games. I don't think an expansion's going to get a reference here, but shout out to those 2. Some other upcoming ones, Compressed Space, Shapesender Deluxe, also both have great kind of distinguishable main characters you can kind of slap onto one of these. Still, both aren't out, so I don't think those will also be featured here. But again, once they come out, maybe next year, maybe they're just the year they come out. We'll see. But that's it for all my honorable mentions. Let's get into my full 10 predictions for the 10 games that'll be on 2026's banner. First off, for my first 3 picks, it's just going to be Monsters Expedition, Baba Is You, and Portal. I don't imagine this is the year they suddenly break from having these 3 characters on there, so I think they'll all be on here. Maybe the monster keeps its claw from the previous year, but I think they'll actually, for this year, revert back to the old monster design. Next, and I don't really have any other room to kind of put these, so I'm just going to put them on top of my existing ones. It's going to look a little ugly. I don't care. For number 4, I am going to predict it's going to be another Drachneck project. The past 2 years, they've included Lock Digital, which is a game they were publishing, as well as 2022, they had Patrick's Pear Box, which was arguably just also a large standout game on its own, but also a game they were helping out with like the console ports. So this year, I think they will also have another one of their own projects on here, and you still can't really see down here, but the only 2 eligible ones are Spooky Express and He Who Watches, and between the 2, I'm going to go Spooky Express. This came out in October, and He Who Watches was announced a month or so ago, so still, a bit recent of an announcement, and I don't think the game has a date yet. It's, point is, it's not out. And as we know, the game has to have already been released, so my prediction between the 2, Spooky Express. I think Spooky Express is going to be on here over He Who Watches. For my number 5, I feel like this is a pretty no-brainer of a pick, But I'm gonna go with Ooh. I actually don't know how to pronounce this game. I'm pretty sure it's just Ooh, though. I don't know, it has the umlaut, so. I think was pretty much the biggest puzzle game to come out from like the May 2025 to May 2026 time span. 2025 was pretty front-loaded in terms of like big puzzle releases, with Root Trees coming out in January and Blueprints in April. And it did kind of leave the rest of the year a bit not empty. There were still a lot of puzzle games that came out, but by comparison, a little bit more quiet on the puzzle front. But Ooh, I think, was easily the biggest puzzle game to come out then. I feel like everyone was talking about this puzzle platformer, and look at that. That is a distinct character, right? Look at that thing. It's so cute. For number 6, I'm gonna go with Is This Seat Taken? I think this was the biggest casual kind of puzzle game from last year. Has very, instantly recognizable characters, and was pretty popular too. So I think this is also a pretty safe bet. You just have to put one of these little shape characters in there. Easy inclusion. 7, this is where I'm starting to get a little less confident. I'm gonna put The Seance of Blake Manor. Detective game that came out last year, got a lot of critical acclaim. I think was one of the highest rated games on OpenCritic of the year. I'm playing it right now. I'm loving it so far. I kind of hope it gets included. This is also kind of a bit of a passion pick, Not much in terms of signature characters. I feel like you could maybe include the main character here. Maybe you just put him in here on one of the sides, like looking in, but I'm gonna put him here and hope that he's here. I guess you could also maybe put one of the turnip jack-o'-lanterns that kind of litter the manor that you're exploring, but I don't know. I feel like this got enough critical attention and enough people enjoyed playing it. I think this is a pretty easy inclusion too. For number 8, just gonna go down here again. It's very scattered right now. But for number 8, I'm gonna go Strange Antiquities. Sequel, of course, to Strange Horticulture, another very popular puzzle game. I don't remember which year Strange Horticulture came out. I think it came out before these showcases started happening, but the only reason I'm not sure about this one is because the first game wasn't featured, so it's a little less likely that the sequel gets featured when the first one didn't. But this was another pretty prominent release. A lot of people really enjoyed Strange Antiquities, so I think this gets included. I haven't played this game, so I don't know what characters or items you could add to here, but I see this cat in all like the marketing images for it, so maybe you put this cat in there. I don't know. Maybe we'll see. Maybe it's something else from Strange Antiquities, and I just don't know because I haven't played the game. 9 is a little bit of a risky pick, but I'm gonna go with 868 Back. This is a sequel to kind of a hack-themed roguelite that came out a long while ago, and I know people really enjoy the original, so this one's coming around. These are all puzzle games, and this one, it's a roguelite, so it's not strictly a puzzle game, but I feel like it still fits into the category of like a thinky, thought-provoking, puzzle-esque game, which is, what a lot of these kind of are. I should also be mentioning, too, when these were featured in the newsletter. Ooh was featured in June 2025's, August 2025's, and January 2026's. Is This Seat Taken was August 2025 and January 2026. The Seance of Blake Manor was November 2025 and January 2026. Strange Antiquities was September 2025 and January 2026. January 2026 was their Game of the Year newsletter, so that's why a lot of these were featured in there too, because it was a lot of both Alan from Draknek as well as some of the other staff members, all of their favorite puzzle picks from the year, so that's why a lot of these are also appearing in January. And 868 Back was featured in January 2025 and November 2024, I think, so this one has been featured in the newsletter, and another sequel like Strange Antiquities. I don't know, I'm kind of risking it with a lot of these sequels here, but I think it might get, featured. It is also coming out this month. Oops. It's also coming out this month, so I feel like it's an easy pick to kind of feature alongside its release. I don't know, it's kind of, the lower we get on this list, the less confident I am in my picks. And last but not least, for number 10, I'm gonna put Motion Wreck. This is another puzzle platformer that came out last year and got some good attention. A lot of people really like this game. I do think in terms of puzzle platformers from last year, Ooh kind of overshadowed it and ate its lunch, but I think it still gets featured. A lot of people really enjoy it. It was also featured in the November 2025 and June 2025 newsletter, so it's got that going for it. And it also has a very very distinct character here. I don't know if you can see that, but that's very that's a character you put on one of these banners. At least I think. So that does it for my predictions for this year's games that will be featured on this banner. This is way too much work for something that really doesn't matter. I just love this showcase. I love kind of the excitement and love that you see for puzzle games whenever this happens. And every time these banners come out, it's like my Super Bowl or whatever. I just get really excited to be able to like point out like, Portal, Paper Trail. I'm really cool. So yeah, this will be it for these. I am hoping to get this video out before they release their banner. I don't know, I feel like I can get it out before then. I feel like they don't, actually release the banner until the event happens. So I'm hoping I can get it out beforehand, but, only time will tell if I actually got these predictions right. I feel like I at least got half of these right, I feel like I couldn't have gotten more than half of them wrong. I'd be shocked if that was the case. Hello again. It has been a little bit since I filmed that section. I'm obviously still working on the video, and come to find out, I was on Blue Sky, and I saw that they had already revealed, the banner image for this year's Puzzle Fest. So, of course, I was hoping to get this out before they released the banner image. I thought it'd be fun to, get it out, and then later on, maybe in its own video or just, strapped onto another one, see, how many of these I got right. Due to me procrastinating and just taking too long on making this, that is not going to be the case, but I figured we could do a live reaction here as I try and see what did I get right. This is kind of the moment of truth. I saw that developers on Blue Sky were already posting about whether the game was in the Cerebral Puzzle case or not, but I just saw that they were posting about it, and the banner image they were using to promote it was new, so I have not looked at it. This is still going to be my first kind of reaction just to see what this is all about. Okay, right. Oh god, here it is. I found full image. Okay, I'm seeing some I was definitely right about. Oh my god, I'm seeing some I was 100% wrong about. Okay, so just going in a circle here, far top right we have Baba from Baba Is You, and then we also have the Portal Sentry turret and the Monster of Monsters Expedition. I was right about all three, and I think in my prediction I also mentioned that I thought the, monster would lose his electronic arm because that was just to promote last year's game, and, they're just probably going to go back to the normal monster this time, and they did, so I was right about those three. I was also right about Spooky Express. The little guy on the top right, that's the vampire from Spooky Express. What I'm immediately wrong about is I mentioned that I thought they would only have one of their projects on here, and to me it was just a matter of whether it would be Spooky Express or He Who Watches, and another puzzle game they had announced that they were publishing. I thought it would just be one. They're both on here, which I think is fun. I think having He Who Watches on here is a really fun inclusion. I like how they included it, and I like that there's no character to include from He Who Watches, but the game revolves around these gigantic blocks that you're shooting arrows at, so that's what they included here, which is fun. Bottom right here is very funny. I was right. It's the Seance of Blake Manor. I was wrong about who they would include, though. I thought they'd just include the main character, but seemingly they included... I'm playing this game, and I already forgot his name, but he's the person running the manor when you go inside. I'm totally forgetting his name. The way they included him is kind of funny. He's just kind of standing there, and I guess a lot of these guys are just, on the border, just kind of sitting there, but he the most just kind of sticks out as kind of just being like he's just glaring at you from the corner. I guess that's the effect they're going for. But hey, I was right about Spooky Express and Seance of Blake Manor. Oh my god, okay, now I'm testing my own puzzle game knowledge. I don't know what this little guy here in the middle is. It kind of looks like a Little Nightmares-esque character, but obviously it's not Little Nightmares. Okay, we'll skip you for now. Okay, another one I was wrong on. Okay, two actually I was wrong on. Left here, above He Who Watches, they have Rel from the new puzzle game Rel. I mentioned him in my honorable mentions as a game that I thought had a very distinct character and they'd likely include, but I just didn't think he was going to be in here. And I was wrong. He's in here. So that's another one I was wrong on. Also, another one I was wrong on. Above it, Rise of the Golden Idol, back again, a third year. Golden Idol was another one I mentioned in my kind of honorable mentions one. I didn't think they would include it because all of its content that it's released in the past year was all DLC, and I didn't think that DLC being released would, qualify you for an inclusion here, but I guess it does. I mean, to be fair too, just as with the first game, the Rise of the Golden Idols DLC is enough content to essentially be just a entirely second game. Like, the first game has like 4, maybe 5 or 4.5 sets of cases, and the DLC all combined is another 4 sets of cases. It's kind of like how for the Mario Kart 8 Deluxe Booster Pass, if anyone remembers that added another 40 courses to the game, which essentially just doubled the amount that was in the original Mario Kart 8 Deluxe on Switch. So, you know, in getting that Booster Course Pass, you were essentially getting like a sequel's worth of tracks. I think that's the similar case here. I just didn't think that it would be included because of that DLC, because it hadn't happened before, but I was wrong. I gotta keep this in mind for the future. The last 2 on the top were ones I was right about. That is the seat taken and ooh. I feel like those were the easiest kind of predictions to make, so I don't feel super satisfied about them being here. I feel like, you know, if they weren't here, it would have been a little bit more confusing as like, why would you not include 2 of the bigger puzzle games from, you know, last summer? Love how they included them. You have one of the characters from Is the Seat Taken, and, you know, for the most part, while Is the Seat Taken kind of just revolves around you going to different places and putting a bunch of these random shape guys into like seats and stuff. The character they included here, I think, is one of the few named characters in the game that you actually kind of follow as you play level by level, so that's pretty cool. And then, of course, I mean, again, a no-brainer. You gotta include Ooh. It was pretty huge last year in the puzzle platformer space. That character design was just screaming to be put in this banner image, so there you go. But now I'm like baffled. I'm like, what are you in the bottom? I can't immediately recognize it. I feel like I'm failing myself, man. Okay, I'm on thinkygames.com. I'm just gonna kind of try and scroll through. Is this a game I like didn't even know about is the thing. I have spent way too long trying to find what this game is. I am going to, for the time being, admit defeat. If I ever find out what this game is, I will add it in the edit. All right, as a little update, the showcase has started. I'm still working on the video. I hope to have it out soon. But when it did start yesterday now, Draknek announced a new game, and it just so happens to have a little guy that I spent way too long trying to find. After I finished recording the video, I continued looking, and I spent another day on and off trying to find it. I like looked through every single game, both that had released last year and was coming out, and I couldn't find him, and I was like pulling my hair out. I didn't even consider that they just had another game that they were publishing. They just hadn't announced yet. But there he is. There's a guy. Looks like a really neat, very cool Sokoban game. So very, very interested to see how this is. Like, I'm gonna play the demo probably because the showcase has started. But now we have an answer. I have an answer, and I can have closure on this. That's where this guy is from. Yeah, there you go. Closure to that one. Okay, summarize. I got, the main 3 right. That was easy. I got Spooky Express, easy. I got Sands of Blake Manor. That's kind of a fun one. I wasn't sure about, but was right about. And I got Ooh. And Is the Seat Taken? So 7 out of 10. I did not predict He Who Watches Rel or Golden Idol being here. A little bit unfortunate, especially since I mentioned those as maybes, and also, kind of reasoned out why I wasn't picking them. Another thing I'm realizing is I think this year also broke my long established rule of there only being 10 games. I think there's 11. That's 11 games. If you count this little guy here at the bottom, who I have yet to find out who it is, that is 11 games, which I guess we can toss my old rule about there only being 10 games per banner. Seems like that was only true for the last 4 years, and then, they decided this year is the year to break pattern. But, 7 out of 11 correct, I will definitely take. Hopefully next year I can get a little more right. This was a fun exercise in trying to make the banner itself a puzzle and piece together, what I thought would be there. So something else I totally forgot to mention in the original parts of this, but I'm happy I'm adding this now so I can, say it. This is the first video in a new series I'm starting. A series that really kind of has no through line aside from the fact that I have some little niche, nearly always meaningless topic I want to talk about. And it's called